Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll get you all to introduce yourselves and sort of find out, what's drawn you here. I know we've got a few people that that have attended a couple of them. So apologies if you have to explain yourselves all over again, but it does help with other people who haven't attended these events. And today's topic basically is looking at how, we want to understand, those that have participated in PPI, how they feel their contribution has helped to shape sort of research or medical treatments and how they feel about that. And likewise, if you participated and you feel you haven't had your contributions acknowledged, or you think there's better ways of doing things, then we also want to hear about that in the conversation. So this is meant to be a free-flowing conversation. Let us hear your thoughts, let us have your discussions, let's listen to each other. And our function, as the NIHR, is to listen to what you're saying. And hopefully somewhere along the line, we'll be able to implement some of these things as we go along. So I'll ask you to introduce yourselves in the order that you appear on my screen. And just remember to unmute yourselves when I come to you. So the first person on my screen actually is Eva.
Hello, I'm always first, but I don't know exactly what to say. I've participated in 2 online workshops, but I'm not sure if that's the PPI. And I do it because I try to get involved because I want to shape the future of medicine and healthcare and NHS. That's what I am interested in, as I think there is a lot of things that can be improved, especially in the digitalization of the NHS, the data sharing. It's quite a mess. Every NHS trust use something different, almost too many programs not connected to each other. So I'd like to help to shape this from the point of view of a patient.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Eva. And yeah, it's a noble aim, and I think everybody now wants to get to the point where actually the NHS just needs to work better for everybody. So yeah, definitely, I think more opportunities will be coming that way in the coming years, as there is more and more of a focus on the data and digital side. So thank you. Gifty.
Yeah, I'm interested in surgical things. I worked in the hospital first as a midwife, then I changed my job because it was midwifery. So I joined the operations department in a foundation trust, and I've been working with hip replacement, leg replacement, what replacement, implant. But I've never really known who are the ones giving us all this equipment that we are using. So when I saw this from a friend who told me about this, and I've enjoyed it, and I want to go further if I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gifty. And I think that's quite an important point to note as someone who's worked in surgery directly. Is I know surgery is the recipient of a lot of medical technologies that come through, and I mean in the past. People, surgeons could receive technologies to actually test, and these would just come through and they can get tested without sort of going through the full procedures that pharmaceutical medication actually goes through. So that's one of the reasons why we exist, is to make sure that there is actually a standardized approach to evaluating devices, and that in turn reduces patient harm, which is obviously the big thing. It's very easy for patients to experience harm if things aren't regulated and managed properly. So thank you. Julie?
Hello, I'm Julie. I'm the lead lay research partner for the Wales Cancer Research Centre and the Cardiff Experimental Cancer Medicine Centre, and also the Surgical MedTech PPI group in Leeds. I've done a lot of PPI across all different sort of aspects for the last 9 years. And I'm really looking forward to talking to a few people who might be sort of at the start of their PPI career, as it were.
Thank you, Julie. And I think that's important as well. We do want people who are new to it. We are quite happy to work with people who are new to PPI, because I know from the outside it can look a bit daunting in terms of, well, I don't understand this language. I don't understand what people are saying. I don't know medtech. But that's what we're here for. You know, we're here to basically smooth that road. We've got lots of experienced PPI members that are more than happy to provide mentorship and guidance.
And I can remember exactly what it was like at my first trial management meeting with all these professors lined up. And it can be a bit scary when you start. Yeah. So don't be put off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I still don't understand some of the words they use, and I work with them. So. Okay, next is Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter Atkins. I'm a service user stroke carer from Dorset in Poole in Dorset. Had a heart attack in 2018, been involved in various PPIE research projects, but the reason that drew me to this one was a heart app that was being developed by a Dorset clinical commissioning group. I took part in that, in the initial trials of that. I just wanted to sort of talk about that experience I had. It was also diabetes and COPD was included in the app as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing, Peter. Yeah, and I'll definitely come back to you. You know, I think it would be good for other members to understand your experience and how that, you know, how you found that with the research contribution side as well, because I don't think we talk about that enough, and I think it would be useful for other people to understand that. So Anne.
Hi, I'm Anne from Northumberland. I'm a member of Voice, and just from the last year, though I had 42 years experience of being a nurse from the late 60s, and I've been retired for a long time. I'm in my 70s. I have osteoarthritis, so I'm sort of very interested in research and anything sort of surgical, because I'm aware I'll be heading towards a surgical part of my treatment, but also just generally very interested in research and new ways of working. So I'm been to a couple of your forums and very interested in what comes up and what everybody has to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And yeah, so yeah, definitely happy to sort of push opportunities your way as well. I know for surgery, we're in the process of applying for funding for the next 5 years. So one of the things that would be interesting actually to get out of today's session as well, as part of what we're here to talk about, is, you know, how we can better engage people. What are the things that we can do moving forwards? Because obviously the traditional engagement has always been just send basically emails out, you know, standard stuff. But if there's anything that we can try and anything that might help people, then that's something that we're interested in as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Philip?
Yes, hello, good morning, everybody. I live on the Isle of Anglesey, up there in North Wales. And good morning, Helen, you've given me a smile, which is really nice. Thank you. I've been in PPI ever since I retired, gosh, getting on for 15 years now. And one thing I want to point out that not many people do is, but there is a potential career in PPI, depending on how much you want to get involved. You will have all heard probably of NICE committees. I sit on NICE committees as a lay member. I sit on various government policy units as a lay member in terms of medical research. So there's a variety of things that one can aspire to if you want to go that far, or just go to your normal patient meetings. It really is, as much as you want to get out of it is what you put in. The main thing is that you will have a lay voice in how research is conducted and what research is conducted. So good luck to everybody. And, you know, I learn every time I come to these meetings, I learn so much, you know, from people, and hopefully I might be able to contribute.
Thank you, Philip. And I am sure with your depth and wealth of experience, you know, would be keen to hear. You've probably seen the full range of what your impact in research is. So it would be interesting to catch up on that in a few minutes. Joanne?
Sorry, I couldn't work it.
It's okay.
This is my first time doing this. I have done online forums before. I'm from Nottinghamshire. I'm come from the viewpoint of a patient. I think it's important that patients have a voice, and I'm midway through lots of different treatments, unfortunately, but I think I've got stuff to offer and hopefully can learn stuff as well. I don't remember why I signed up for this or how, but this sort of thing interests me, so that's why I signed up, I think.
Yeah.
See how it goes.
No worries. Thanks for that. And I mean, that's the reason why we set up these sessions. It's so that, you know, if you don't know what it is, you're not sure, you just want to find out more, this is a safe space actually for people to find out about things. This is a non-judgmental space. So you've got everything from your very experienced contributors to actually novices. And it's the first time, and we're here to help you navigate that, you know. So obviously, if you've got any questions along the way, you know, seriously, feel free to ask. We've got lots of people that can answer those questions, and there's lots of places we can also signpost you to. But definitely, the patient voice is at the top of our list. And what we are working towards doing is making sure the patient voice actually occupies the same space as the researcher and clinician voice at the table, because at the moment, everything happens with the researchers, the clinicians, the companies, and then someone remembers, oh, there's people called patients and publics along the line. Let's just find out a couple of words from them. So that's what we want to work towards. So obviously your views, thoughts, suggestions are very much welcome on that. Helen?
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm actually from Guts UK charity. We deal with top to tail all digestive conditions. We have over 40 digestive conditions on our website. I'm actually there, it's a long title, it's called Public Patient Involvement and Engagement Officer. So I'm all about the patient voice, how important the patient voice is. I've been a patient myself. I've spent many, many months, sadly, in hospital. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be a patient and not to be heard. So we're very, very passionate at Guts UK that the patient does have a voice. And we've just completed a project in pancreatitis where it's called a PSP, where on equal footing, the patients and the clinicians, the healthcare professionals all come together on equal footing. So no one has a stronger voice than the other. And any projects that we get involved in has to be equal footing. It has to be the same. And if it's not, then, you know, we shout the loudest. So I'm all about making sure that the patient has a voice. So thank you. Thanks for the invite.
No, thanks, Helen. And yeah, the Surgical MIC, we do quite a bit of work with you guys as well, and send projects your way. So
yeah, thank you. And we always try and make sure we've got a good patient voice.
Yeah, thank you. Becky?
Sorry, share my experience by trying to find the mute button on the computer. Yeah, I'm a member, one of the PPI members of the Leeds Surgical MedTech. I'm also an autistic adult and a carer and an ex-research scientist. So I kind of fell into patient involvement because I was going to be a stay-at-home parent, was totally useless at it, and had to find something to keep me engaged and active, and still very interested in science. I'm probably one of the experienced members. I've got 10 years experience. I'm currently working with the Medicines Healthcare Regulatory Agency, which is a government organisation to do with medicines, and I've worked with NICE and Imperial College in the past.
Thank you, Becky. Yeah, so Becky is also one of our members together with Philip, Julie and Deborah. And I think what Becky brings is, when we talk about diversity in PPI, there is obviously a tendency to stick to the obvious sort of factors of diversity. But what Becky brings is actually the perspective from individuals on the autistic range is actually how is that information processed? How can that information actually be presented? Which is something that tends to be forgotten quite a lot. So you might think that you've got nothing to offer, but there's a whole lot of things that we wouldn't consider because that voice is just really quiet. So that also shows the importance of every single voice for research. Angela?
Hello, my name's Angela Paget. I have my own experiences of PPI, mainly in mental health. I'm feel very strongly about the patient voice. And a bit like Helen, my job is around engaging the public in education research. So I work at Bournemouth University as a public involvement in education research officer. I've been doing it for a very long time, and just, yeah, very passionate about the patient voice being heard, being central to research, and have seen the benefits of the patient voice in education for our health professionals as well.
Okay, thank you, Angela. So that would be interesting as well to hear from you as well. Hamid, I'll come to you in a bit. If you could just mute your microphone and then I'll come round. So Deborah.
Hi everyone, I'm Deborah. I'm also a PPI member and I'm interested in sharing my thoughts and opinions on topics that I find that are very important to myself. So I think that patients' voices are very important. It's important that they're heard and that we establish what works for patients and what is not working in order to make sure that change is effective. And I've also joined a few focus groups and studies on different medical research. Recently done a HIV prevention research, which I thought was very interesting, and I learned a lot of new information.
Thank you, Deborah. And I think the whole learning theme is going to be central to this. Is, you know, a whole lot of it is about actually learning about those health conditions. It's basically that the time that you normally wouldn't get to ask all these questions during a normal hospital appointment. You've got more than enough time within a research project. People are actually willing to sit down and explain different things. So I think, yeah, in terms of learning, it's an absolutely great way to learn more about health, about different medical conditions. And then I think once you understand a bit more, then it's a whole lot easier to participate in some of these things, because then you can find out what your interest is. Hamid?
Thank you so much for bringing me in. Just a very quick one. I wanted to say, we talked about diversity in research. I think we need to think about the underserved communities in research, because we got diversity, but it seems to be diversity that we seem to see the same people over and over again, or the same communities. So what we need to do at some point is come together and really kind of take a stock of who are the underserved communities, who are the non-traditionally engaged groups, and how do we get to them, and how do we reach out to those communities? Because when people say, for example, the South Asian communities, the Indian community may be very affluent and involved, but the Bangladeshi community may be very underserved, but they get clustered into one. And same with Black communities, you may have the Nigerian community that might be very involved, but then the Jamaican community or another community may be very disengaged. So it would be really good to do some stock taking about what is it that are the underserved communities, and how do we be making more accessible for those communities. Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you for that point, Hamid. I think the focus is starting to move towards that. But I think the absolute key thing that you mentioned there is identifying the underserved communities. You know, as I alluded earlier, I think when people think about diversity, it tends to be restricted to skin color. It's not actually moving beyond skin color. Diversity means a whole lot more things than just the color of one's skin. It could be people's backgrounds, it could be socioeconomic status, you know, it could be unseen conditions, you know, or unseen disabilities. So it's how do we bring people in, and how do we sort of develop activities and events and packages that actually meet the needs of those communities, instead of people assuming that people want to hear certain things or see certain things from us. So that's definitely going to be an underlying theme, and it's probably, you know, also looking at, you know, how underserved communities can actually make a difference. So I think a few days ago we did, those that are on our PPI mailing list will have received a link that was developed by one of the NIHR biomedical research centers in London, which actually has a very nice explainer video about why diversity in research is very, very important. And it's basically, we're still at the bottom of that ladder. We now need to start climbing it, but we just need to make sure that the rungs actually work, are strong enough to bring everybody else. And Becky's put in the chat that she's a neurodiverse disabled adult, parent and carer for a child with autism and long-term health conditions. Special education needs and neurodiversity are often not considered as a diverse issue, which is absolutely true. And if we look at surgery, undergoing surgery, most people will have a lot of questions about what's going to happen and things that are going to take place and how they're going to recover. And this is even more challenging, for example, with autistic individuals, it's a different, unfamiliar environment. And how do we deal with information along those lines? How do we actually reassure and actually provide a familiar environment to make sure the environment is not one that raises stress levels? So all those things are actually absolutely important, and they've never been considered before, mainly because the patient voice has sort of never been central enough to a lot of these things. Joania, you added that you're also part of the disabled community. And it's and you're an important part of the community too. And we need to reflect that in the research and not just have research reflect the needs of mainly able-bodied individuals. So before we go into sort of the chat, I think there's one more person. Annie, if you could introduce yourself. You're on mute just in case you're talking. Because I know there's two people that are having issues with your internet connection. So Annie, whenever you're ready, we'll bring you in. But I guess the floor is open now. This is the time. If anyone wants to ask any other member from their introductions a question, now's the time. This is your floor for it. If anyone wants to ask us any questions to stimulate any discussions, then let me know. Other than that, I can definitely ask some of our PPI committee members to come in and provide their experiences. Oh, hi. So Annie, mic or camera. No, that's fine. If the chat is working, Annie, so if you need to put anything in there, I will be checking up on it, so please do that. So yeah, the floor is open. You can raise your hands virtually or physically or type, and then we can have a discussion around that. But bearing in mind, obviously the main theme of the conversation today is actually how do those contributions make a difference? How have you found it, and what do you think we could be doing more of? Yes, Peter?
I'll start the ball rolling.
Thank you.
It's all right. With regard to, I just wondered what people's thoughts were about the general situation at the moment. Whether you do research or education, I think, you watch the news and you hear all the sort of things that are going on with health and social care. So when you take part in research, I think it's really important that, as people have said, that they want to contribute, they want to improve, they want to make things better. But the scenario that we're living in at the moment is quite down when you hear about all the things that are going wrong. So I think it's even more vitally important that when you do take part in a research project, that you're kept informed all the way through it, and also at the end of it as to what the results are. And I think that sometimes it works okay. I've been involved in research projects where it's worked really well, and then others where it's not so well, and where the funding's suddenly been cut. So I just wondered what people thought about that generally.
Yes, Julie?
Yes. I mean, I think, it's right. Some research teams seem to work better than others. And I think one thing that can help a lot in making a research team work well is if the researchers actually look at the UK public involvement standards, because that really sets out how you should be treating your public involvement members, and this whole thing about treating them as an equal member of the team and not just having someone sitting in your trial management group so you can tick that box and say, yes, we've got public involvement. So, I think it's up to us to keep pushing the standards in the groups that several of us are involved in, and encouraging researchers to really look at these and take it seriously. And, the funders want them to take it seriously. They want to see evidence that they're looking at the standards, but I think there's a little way to go yet before we can really say that all research groups are doing it well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even touching on sort of feedback, I think the feedback loop is still needs a lot of work. I think it's for some pharmaceutical companies, for example, it's probably a bit more established. I know at least of one pharmaceutical company that definitely knows how to do the feedback loop and invite people back after clinical trials. And that's something that we are aiming to do, particularly with medical technology. It's slightly more difficult for us, mainly because we are right at the start of the process where people are still conceptualizing the idea. They've still got sort of drawings on paper. So in terms of feedback, you're looking at feedback over 5 to 7 years before you actually get something quite tangible. Yeah, so feedback is definitely a thing that we are starting to look at, and we know from previous discussions with other community, PPI groups, the lack of feedback is the one that actually stops the involvement. People don't see the point of taking part if they don't understand how their contributions made a difference. So yeah, it's still, as Julie said, it's work in progress. It's just trying to get researchers to understand it. Some of it's down to funding challenges. So PPI traditionally just hasn't been funded as well as it should be, but things are starting to change. We're starting to see more and more units getting more than just the token payment for PPI activities. And so we've got a few comments in the chat. Becky's put down, I think that we don't receive much feedback on our input. I find that an increasing number of researchers who come back for help in coming back for a specific project. So things like plain English summaries and reviewing and ad hoc work. So that tends to be a bit more common. So yeah, definitely, I think it's the feedback is the key thing, and I think we're really trying our best to get researchers to understand that. But I think part of it is we just need to build the mechanisms for it. Yes, Helen.
Yeah, I was just going to say, at Guts UK, we fund research as well, but part of the funding is that it must have PPIE in it. That's the first thing. But one of the things that we do is we have a panel called Experts by Experience. So it's a PPIE, it's patients like yourselves that are on the panel. And so when we're looking at any research grant, what actually happens is the lay summary goes to all the members that are on the panel. We then have a meeting and we have a big discussion about it, whether they feel PPIE has been involved enough, just at the very basic stages of lay summaries and looking for grants. What we have changed is that 3 members of our panel actually go on to, so when the awards have been looked at by the healthcare professionals, our 3 members of the panel actually represent the panel actually at those meetings. So the research committee award meetings, we have patients representing the full panel to give feedback about, was that lay summary enough? Did it involve the patient enough? Has the patient actually even been thought about? And this word is getting out there and realizing that this is incredibly important, because anybody that's going for a grant, if the PPIE is not up to what our panel feels it should be, it will not necessarily get completely rejected by any stretch, but it will be absolutely highlighted at the meeting. And I've seen, I attend these award meetings, and the opinions of healthcare professionals have changed. They're suddenly going, oh yeah, you've got a point there. Oh, we hadn't thought about that from a lay side of it. The other thing is that they have to make sure that the lay summary is a lay summary, you know. And then when we do award the awards, notoriously researchers are like, well, you know, I'm sitting in my little place and, you know, I don't have to feed back to anybody. But part of our awards, our research grants now are, this is part of the contract. This you have to feed back to us, because, you know, we need, you know, not every week by any stretch, but at least every quarter, every 6 months, and to start feeding back. It might be really, really tiny, literally zero information, but at least it's something that we can go back to, you know, the involvement side of it, any patient that's got involved and that kind of thing. And it's really important to us, and we have found that's really made a difference. We are, you know, and I think slowly but surely, I think, you know, the patient's voice has really, really been heard out there now, because researchers, it's filtering through that they cannot apply for grants or anything like that without the patient's voice. So I just wanted to kind of add that, really.
No,
So,
I mean, that's really interesting, Chad. I mean, I would be interested in if there's like a few examples you can give of questions that patients have asked regarding that application. I mean, you obviously don't have to give away like what the actual research project is about, but if there's a couple of example sort of questions where, you know, there are light bulb moments, you know, are you able to share some of those?
Yeah, I mean, some of them, it's really kind of basic, like it might be they've put in a lay summary, and just as a kind of tick box, they've sort of said, oh, we'll meet with 2 patients and we'll do that maybe twice a year. It's like, what? How can 2 patients within a very big subject area be able to give an overview view? Yes, they will have views, but you need a collaborative, and you need, you know, people from varying different parts of the nation, and different experiences and different time, you know, timing is really important, because you might be at the start of a treatment, you might be halfway through, you might be at the end, or you might be 10 years on from a treatment, and that makes a huge difference, or an experience, because your viewpoint changes. So our experts are really keen to know, you know, there has to be at least a panel of between 8 and 10 minimum, really, of involvement, and they're very hot on picking up on things like in the lay summary, terminologies that they feel like they can sort of blind in science almost, and they will pick up on certain words. So that then goes, you know, when these applicants have been interviewed, you know, suddenly they've got a lay person that's actually asking these really, you know, what does that word actually mean? And they have to suddenly just, you know, they have to explain themselves, or some of them are so arrogant that they'll just sit there and go, oh, well, it doesn't really matter to you, does it? Whoa, that is red rag to a bull, you know. So I've seen that happen. I've seen that. And, you know, it's almost, actually, one person we were interviewing, he's a fantastic researcher, and, you know, he's renowned in his field. And he said that, and then he realized that, he went, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, should I? You know, it's like, really, you know, are we having this conversation? So yeah, things are definitely changing, and thankfully, you know, I shouldn't put it into an age thing, but as researchers are getting more and more familiar with this, they are starting to feedback. But our panel are quite brutal. They're really brutal. They won't be walked over, and that's why it's so important to have the patient voice from all areas. And we normally do a matrix, make sure that we are covering, you know, as many areas as that we can possibly cover. That's really important. And that goes from everything from, you know, the whole spectrum. So, and particularly, as was mentioned earlier, you know, the underserved population, you know, the whole diversity, not just, you know, as you quite rightly said, it's not just about colour.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's really fascinating to hear. I'm sure there'll be some questions brewing, but even on the underserved thing, I think it's I know there's some places with they're having digital inclusion strategies, which works very well if you're connected properly digitally. But there's some people that want to be digitally included, but they just don't have the means to do that. So once again,
Yeah.
it's what happens with those people. Just because we're digitally connected doesn't mean that everybody else is or wants to be necessarily. So
Exactly.
no,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I know there's been some comments about costs, obviously factoring in adequate costs for PPI involvement. So that's something that we're definitely starting to work on, certainly within the MedTech cooperative. And also, as Becky's put, it's about brutal feedback. Yeah, we've got a couple of members on our committee that are known for brutal feedback. So it does shake up the researchers. They do go home and they sort of do need to reevaluate their lives, but it lends to a better application. So, brutal feedback is definitely what we want. So yeah, thank you. Philip?
I just want to say that whilst I agree with just about everything that Helen has said, one of the issues with lay summaries is that as a lay person, we don't know if they're accurate. We can check the language and we can check everything else, but do they actually describe what the research is going to do? Or is it something that's made up? I mean, if you take a simple story like, I don't know, going for a picnic, let's say, you could make up any words you like and portray that to anybody who reads it and think, yeah, that's good, going to a picnic. But in essence, what they're doing is digging a hole and building a fire. Okay, so what you've got to do, in one trial I sat on, we actually had a panel of clinicians reading the lay summaries to check their accuracy against the actual research, so that they actually genuinely describe what the research was going to be in lay terms, because we're not there to check that. We're not there to check, in effect, that the lay summary truly reflects the research that's going to happen. If it were so, then we would all be researchers, wouldn't we? And there'd be no point in having a lay summary. And the other point is, I know Helen said we're pretty brutal on lay summaries. I have to be very careful, because what you have to say to yourself also is, who reads those lay summaries? That they're not published in the Daily Mail or the Sunday Times. So Joe Soap Public, who's on the darts team at the local pub, does it matter? He's not going to read them, is he? Unless he searches the internet and really does make a deep search to find out that lay summary. It isn't publicly available as such. So whilst being brutal is good, it's also sort of, if you like, be carefully brutal. So anyway, that was just my point, is that, the lay summary, we're not there and we can't look at the interpretation from the actual real research. And the trial I sat on was the clinicians actually corrected lay summaries for technical reasons, i.e. they weren't truly reflecting exactly what the research was aimed at doing. So just mention that.
Yes, Peter.
I was just going to quickly say the other thing that I see quite a bit as well is, and I think it's really hard to do when you've been involved in research for a while, is put yourself in the position of somebody who's brand new and is there for the first time. I think the training for new people really needs to be looked at across the board, and things like shadowing, so where you've got people that have been involved in PPI working with those new people, courses for new people involved in research as well, because I've seen people that have been fine, but it's almost like rabbits in the headlights, not knowing what's going on with regard to it as well. So I think that's something that preparing people is really important, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. I think I think the training and education is absolutely important. I know when we did our recruitment for our PPI committee, we made sure that we had novice PPI members on there, and they don't have pressure to contribute or to say things that they're not sure about. I think for them, it's more to do with just observing and sort of finding your feet. But there definitely is a place for things like shadowing, for example, and mentoring, so that people just, have got that friendly face, or someone, like yourself, who's more than happy to walk them through it and explain, why they said certain things, or why it was okay to do this, or why it wasn't okay for someone to say something. I think that's a bit that we probably need to work a bit harder on. And that's one of the things that we're looking at is it possibly a case of, going to the different communities and saying, oh, actually, if we were to do a training and education course, what does that need to look like? If there's anyone with an interest in training and education, for example, could we sign them up to help us develop, obviously, the training course, and they'll be fully acknowledged, accredited, reimbursed for their time. So it's one of those things where we're looking at what's the best way of doing this, of getting proper training. And Hamid, I know you've put in there that, yes, we did mention organizing a conference, and it's still something that's on our radar, and it's something I'll definitely get back to you on.
Great.
In about 2 or 3 months, because we definitely want to push that. We do want to have something. We just haven't had the headspace in the last couple of months, but it's definitely on our radar.
Thank you so much. I look forward to helping and supporting you and working with you. Sounds like a great plan. Thank you.
Yeah. Julie?
Yes, I'd just like to come back at the comment about, brutal feedback and that sort of thing. But we have to be careful, because, when researchers are new, they really don't know much about PPI. They're probably not very good at writing lay summaries. And, we can be straight, but constructive and supportive. And I think it's really good if PPI can get involved in training these new researchers. In a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to Leicester to take part in an experimental cancer medicine centre network group where they've got 54 early stage career researchers. Yeah. And we're going to be running sessions as PPI on writing a lay summary. And we're going to be looking at lay summaries that they have written. And I've had those sent to me. And some of them, they say, don't be too brutal, because these are new people. You could really destroy some of them because they're not good. So you've got to think of how to do it positively. But I think it's a really good step if we can get at these new early stage researchers and tell them about PPI at that stage in their career, so they can really be good from the beginning.
Yeah, and I definitely like that plan, Julie. I think, getting them, well, as our surgeons, not my words, but it's our surgeon to say, catch them as they're young. So that's the way they see it, is that's the best way to get that early engagement. But I think, I think it's for PPI, we can facilitate that and we can support it and we can organize it. But I think it's more powerful if that training is actually coming from patients and members of the public, rather than it coming from someone like me, who doesn't have hospital experience, or who doesn't have surgery experience in the way that is going to be constructive, to a researcher or to a company that's developing something. And they definitely need to hear it from people who are going to use these things, and people who are going to have certain things implanted in them. So, and I think it sort of ties in with the conference that Hamid is suggesting, where he did mention, I think late last year, about having, a conference to actually highlight, that this is what's there. And it's a PPI-led conference, whereas I think a lot of the times conferences are led by clinicians or academics. And then you got PPI as a distinct session somewhere along the line, and, join it at your own peril kind of thing. But we want to make it all about PPI, and then people can actually immerse themselves in that world. So yeah, definitely something to look at doing. Angela.
Yes, I was just going to say, following on perhaps what Julie has talked about, we have at Bournemouth a course aimed at researchers. So we've done a lot of thinking about how to train members of the public to get involved in research. And we kind of thought, actually, what the need is for the researchers to be educated in PPI and research. So we've developed a 20 credit master's unit, and it's simply called Public Involvement in Research, and it's been co-designed and co-delivered by academics and service users, and it's a very hands-on, it's online, so we can broaden the reach. So it's not just the south of England based, and people come as researchers with a particular project. They might be a research nurse working on something in practice, so they come with that, and instead of us teaching them how to do things, they come with their project and we challenge them. What are you doing about PPI? We talk about PPI, give them ideas, we get them doing certain exercises. It's very hands-on, although it's online. We've run it twice now, it's running again in May. It does cost because it's a master's level unit, but it's kind of one of our ideas that actually the people that need training are probably the researchers rather than the members of the public. So, and it's been very successful. I can put a link to it in the chat if you'd like.
That would be fantastic, yeah, Angela. That would definitely be fantastic, and I probably will catch up with you later on that, because we're also looking at, well, actually, what can we do? Because I think in Leeds, you know, they do have seminars every now and again, but I'll probably need to look at what that looks like before I talk to you, and then we can see whether there's something that can be done on that front. Another thing we've spoken about is actually if there is a need, or if communities require, you know, the same training, but for patients and members of the public, you know, whether we can actually have something that's also accredited, that also counts towards some sort of educational qualification or accreditation. Then, you know, for those that are motivated by that kind of thing, then they've got a mechanism to say, well, actually, I understand what I'm doing. So yeah, so that would be good. Yeah, so we can definitely catch up on there. And I know, Joanne, you said you've got access to so many people, to groups that would definitely be interested in that. Yeah, and I would definitely say I can send a link to our mailing list, because that's the mechanism for a whole lot of these things to come out. We tend to send invitations to focus groups or any other PPI activities. They tend to go out via email through the mailing lists. So I will send it out as part of the post sort of webinar thing, communications. And if people want to sign up to that, then that's perfectly fine. And then you get information directly from us. Yeah, but I think, you know, going back to the lay summaries point, Philip, that you mentioned, I think that's also quite interesting in terms of whether it actually reflects what it is. And I think the bigger question there will end up being, well, what can be done about it? Or is it something that we just have to accept that that's the slight risk or gamble that we take with just basically looking at the lay summaries? I know what we try to do as the Surgical MedTech Cooperative is get people involved quite early on in those projects, so that by the time they are getting involved in lay summaries, then they've got an idea of what it is that people are trying to do. Because I think the standard is usually you just lump to the lay summary in front of you, and then it's like, you know, yeah, let's review this and tell us what's going on. But then there's no context in terms of how far this thing has gone. I know you also have lay summaries. I know Becky, and I still sort of feel bad for this. I know you got involved in a lay summary that was very, very, very technical, extremely technical, and you needed to lie in a dark room for a couple of days, you know, so there are lay summaries like that are literally that terrible. And you've got to spend days just trying to work out what one sentence means. Yeah, so I think it's that kind of balance that we're also trying to get. Peter, you mentioned earlier on in your introduction that you had done a couple of trials, you know, related to the cardiology and your heart attack. I would be interested to know whether you felt your input actually contributed something. Did you ever get feedback from it? Did you know if anything came out of that? It just would be interesting to know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, it involved, so it was the first time I'd been involved with an app, and it involved 12 members of the public in the Dorset area. Some of them were linking into it via diabetes, some through heart attack and stroke, and some through COPD. and we were invited to go over to Dorchester with the clinical commissioning group and the designers of the app, and talked about, obviously had training initially before we actually had it, how to use it. And then we started using the app, and then we had to feed back our thoughts. And in my instance, it was the drop-down menu for the types of medication didn't have my specific, one of the tablets that I was being given. And I brought that up with the team, and they reacted to that within it was about 3 or 4 days. They'd added it to the app and the drop-down menu, and a couple of other medications were put on as well as part of that. Some of the exercises that they were doing as well for physiotherapy, there were some new ones that were passed on from the physiotherapy team at Poole Heart Club via feedback that I'd got from them as well, and that was added to it as well. The problem came at the end, so that lasted about 7 or 8 weeks, and then we didn't hear anything, and we didn't get anything. And I looked at my emails and sent them an email and said, could you give us an update? And we weren't told how it was going, whether it had been fully accepted or anything. And it was only then that I got a message, but it took me and 2 other people to send those initial emails purely off our own back to get that follow-up.
And it really shouldn't. I mean, it's as we're saying, I think that feedback should be, which is why I like, Helen, the way you guys do things, where you write in that the feedback's got to be provided. It's probably a technique we're going to borrow, you know, and use that as well. But yeah, feedback, you know, you shouldn't have to ask for feedback, you know, for contributing to that. And I think that's sort of our thinking as well, is you're helping these companies and researchers gain reputations and all sorts of things. And, you know, you can't even get a simple thank you. This is what you've done. So no worries, Angela. Thank you for contributing. And yeah, I'll definitely be in touch. So thanks for your contact details. Yeah, so it's imperative that people actually provide this feedback. And there's some members of our committee that took part in a MedTech focus group for a device basically to help assess cardiorespiratory fitness before surgery. And it's a wearable device. And the company actually came back, and they do want to set up a program of regular feedback. So we've actually been talking to them about, well, actually, how regular does it need to be? What are you going to provide? Are you going to actually facilitate these things? Is it going to be face-to-face? So it is starting to work slowly, and it's about making them realize that it's not something to be taken lightly. If they do want to get to the other end safely and quickly, and to gain the trust of the public with their devices, then these are the sorts of things that they need to do. So yeah, so feedback definitely is one of the things that yeah, we're going to be looking at earlier on, quite soon anyway. Yeah. Anyone else taken part in research? Philip, you want to say something? Is that a clap? Or
yeah, I want to mention that one of the things I found interesting about lay summaries and PPI reviews is that I sat on a funding panel. I've sat on several, and that's the only time you actually get to read lay people's reviews, because within that application for funding are various comments from clinicians and professors, etc., plus the lay summary comments from the lay people, which could be 1 or 2, depending on who's been reviewing it. And it's amazing what people do right. So that's the only time, though, that we actually get to read real lay summaries or real lay comments from PPI people. And that's interesting. So if ever you get the opportunity to go and sit on a funding panel, I think you'll find it really interesting to read the voting, because I find that 90% of lay people always vote yes, go ahead with it, you know, whatever the research is. But it is interesting to read their comments and think to yourself, I'm not sure they actually really understood this or or their comment shows me that they didn't understand what this research was going to be about. So it is interesting, but it's a shame that we can't have some, if you like, anonymized comments of these lay reviews. But then the problem is to compare them with the research, you actually have to have a copy of the research as well. But anyway, it is interesting.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie.
Yes, I think some of the panels that I've done the lay reviews before it goes to the funding panel and written the little report that Philip has read on the funding panel. And for some of the funders, they actually send back to me results of, well, you know, did this get funded at the funding panel? Which is really nice to hear what actually happened when you sent it off into the ether. You know, what happens to your lay review? And others also send me a copy of my review together with the other sort of 5 or 6 that are from health economists and researchers and statisticians and so on, and what they've said about it from their point of view. And that's really interesting as well, because they're coming at it from a different angle, obviously. But sometimes, you know, you can draw a parallel and think, oh yeah, well, I sort of spotted that in my lay review. And it's just nice to get some feedback, because so often you do these things, you send them away and you don't know whether it was good or not, or whether they liked it. You know, the only way you can judge is whether they send you another one.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, well, they must have quite liked the first one. And everybody likes to have a little bit of feedback now and again, especially a bit of nice feedback.
Yeah.
But, you know, we also want to know if we're not quite doing it right.
Yeah.
But you're in a bit of a vacuum as a PPI person, I think, in all this area.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's interesting, because that's one of the points I was raised at the PPI committee meeting, is actually for the companies to give the PPI members who've taken part in medtech focus groups feedback on how they have found that useful. So it's a two-way process. I think it's about balancing that bit out, and we are working on that as well, to make sure that both sides get the feedback that they need. But even on the topic of sort of lay summaries and things, so Becky's put that she tends to get a lot of research summaries, mainly because she's got a scientific background. But I think it's also important to note, to those that are unfamiliar, is you don't have to do research summaries. There's different elements of patient and public engagement and involvement. You know, if research summaries aren't your thing, then that is perfectly fine. You do not have to do that. There's other things that you can contribute to. It might be you just want to be a fly on the wall of a particular project, and that is perfectly fine. It's something we can facilitate. It might be you just want to sit in, you want to attend an event, for example, that seems very aimed at clinicians and academics, but if you feel that's going to help with your educational experience or your own personal experience, and that is something we can facilitate. So it's just sort of a side note to say, you know, if some of these experiences aren't the things that rock your boat, the door's open to discussion, you know, for a wide range of opportunities for you to get involved in. It might be things we haven't even thought about, but we are more than keen to accommodate those needs. And before I come to you, Peter, Becky's put, you know, feedback to PPI members. Yeah, it needs to be handled in a sensitive manner. The neurodiverse bunch can take in everything literally. I was offered feedback from my membership of the NICE committee when I resigned, but I decided against this. Yeah, so once again, it's having, when we talk about diversity, it's looking at everything and not just assuming someone will just sort of take it as nothing, you know, they'll get over it. You know, there are some people where actually they're not going to get over it very quickly, and it's going to affect them a whole lot more than others. So thanks for that feedback. Yes, Peter.
I was just going to say, my advice to new people getting involved in research would be, first priority, elephant sat in the room, is find out how payment is done at the beginning, not halfway through it, and who is the person to link with regards to that. And a bit of what Becky was saying in her chat, it's good to say no sometimes. Actually managing your workload and not get overwhelmed, because I think it's really easy to get sucked in, and before you know it, you can't keep up and you can only spin so many plates. So yeah, manage that workload, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Peter. I think, yeah, workload is definitely important. Yeah, you can say yes to everything, and it's actually quite intensive stuff. It's not something you can read in an hour and think, yeah, you've made this assessment. A whole lot of it can be technical. You need to understand what's happening. You need to sort of consider, well, actually, if this was me, what would happen? Or how would I think? And, you know, sometimes researchers can send you, 100-page documents and things. And, if you're required to read all 100 pages, that's a lot of documents to read for something that is not your job, or something that you're not being paid, possibly being paid adequately for. So yes, it is okay to say no. You don't have to say yes to everything. That is why we've got a wide mailing list. There's some people that will take it up and others won't, and that's perfectly fine. Hamid.
Thank you so much, Veronica. It's been really a pleasure to be here today and hear everything, and especially we touched upon equality, diversity and stuff and research. I'm sorry, I can't stay any longer. Is there anything very important that I need to know before I go?
I can't think of any at the moment, apart from, obviously, if you end up having any questions, then definitely, you know where my email is.
Yeah.
We'll probably spend another 10-15 minutes, and then we'll go off. But then obviously there'll be a bit of feedback as well.
Yeah. So are you going on for another 10-15 minutes, did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. I thought you'd be finishing at 4. No worries, I'll stick around. I'll stay around.
It's okay. Yeah, no. I just tend to try and get through some of the comments and things. I don't want to leave it. So I think once it comes to an end, obviously, if you need to leave, feel free to leave.
Is it officially that we finish at 1 o'clock, or is it that we finish at 1:30?
By 1:30, we normally finished by past whatever hour.
90 minutes, not 60 minutes. No, I'll stick around. Sorry, I thought it was for 60 minutes. I'll stick around. I'm just gonna go and let the carer know that I need to another 30 minutes. I'll stick around. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Hamid. Yeah, and Julie's put in the chat, involving PPI in setting research priorities is very, very important. And I think that's why it was, we did disseminate the Guts UK because you did a research priority thing, and that was really, really good. So yeah, definitely, I think setting research priorities is absolutely key. And we'll probably be doing more of that. I think in the past, it's really been limited to clinicians and academics. So once again, it's about, or actually from a patient perspective, if you are recovering from surgery, for instance, what is the most important question that you need answered? And you will find the needs of the surgeons will be very different to the needs of the patients. And it's how do we bring those together? And how do we make sure we also have opportunities for people to do that? So I know with, so for Philip, for example, he came up with a suggestion, that he came to us and said, well, I haven't seen anyone doing anything along these lines. And we've managed to put him in touch with another cooperative that looks at that particular technology. And I think you've got your meeting scheduled quite soon, I think the next couple of weeks, haven't you, Philip? And that's going to help in terms of developing something that's actually important to the patient, as opposed to something that's just important for the surgeon. So those are things we can do as well. If you've got ideas or concepts, please run them past us, because if we know someone who's done it or someone who's working on it, we can definitely introduce you to that particular team. And you can start sort of finding out what it is that they're trying to do. Yes, Julie.
Yes, I think priorities come right at the beginning. They come before you've got your funding and put the proposal in and things, because if you can align yourself with priorities set by, Cancer Research UK or the NIHR or NICE or whatever, then you stand a good chance of getting funding. And to have public involved in setting these priorities is really important, because then you get the things done that the patient wants to get done. Because for researchers, it can be very exciting to be looking at all these sort of new therapies for stage 4 cancer. And really the patients want it never to get to stage 4. They want a lot of research on, early diagnosis and better screening and this sort of thing, which perhaps aren't as attractive to the researchers to be carrying out. So we need to get our voices heard to get them working on the right things. And I think when you've done a bit of PPI and you get to the stage where you're actually on governance bodies, that's when you can have really quite a lot of impact as to where you're going in terms of a strategy. I know we've just drawn up a cancer strategy for Wales this year, and I was, involved certainly in drawing that up and in pushing the point where early diagnosis hadn't made it to one of the key 6 themes, taking it up with the director of Health and Care Research Wales and saying it has to be there. And actually it is in there now. It's bolted on to one of the 6, but we can have a lot of impact, but that perhaps comes a bit later on, because you're not going to get onto governance bodies when you start doing PPI. But as you gain experience, the opportunities do widen out and you can do more and more. But I think getting onto that first trial management group is quite difficult for everyone. I know I applied for a couple and didn't get on to start with and could have been a bit discouraged, but you just keep going and then you do get there eventually.
Yeah, and I think that's an important note in terms of aligning your needs to the research as well, because then it's easier to get sort of opportunities coming that way, so, and, so sort of latching on to what you've been saying, another good example of where needs tend to be mismatched is, for us, we tend to hear from a lot of patients that actually want to understand how nutrition and exercise can help their recovery and help their sort of performance during surgery. But as you said, surgeons have got other things that are far more interesting. You got words like nanotechnology and, nanoparticles and, minimally invasive devices and all these fancy words are floating around. That's what really rocks their boat. But there's lots of technologies as well, looking at things like actually how do you make sure your diet improves your chances of recovering better from surgery? How do you prepare for a particular type of surgery? And, researchers are always looking for members of the public to actually just try out some of these technologies. Some of them are, smart mobile phone apps. Some of them actually just might be paper format type of booklets, but they're actively looking for people to try them out. So that they get a sense of what it is. And then they also want the feedback, and it's not about, oh, they want to hear, oh, this device is nice. That's not the point, because we don't want to give them feedback that's not reflective of what you think, because it's going to hurt patients if we do that. They also want to hear the things that sort of don't make sense to you. And I think it goes back to your point, Julie, and others, which is you've got to be sensitive in how that feedback is given. Is they need to understand why you're not happy with a certain element and what that means to you as a patient. So Becky's put in the chat that when she gave negative feedback, she thought that would be the end of involvement, but actually they came back and they said, no, we want you because you're telling us things that nobody's going to tell us. You're telling us things that we normally wouldn't want to hear, but they help us make a device or a technology a whole lot better. So it's things like that. It's that contribution, I think, that, I think small companies are starting to understand the value of it a bit more, and clinicians have always understood that, but I think it's just having that mechanism, and it's about having that that confidence to say, well, actually, I am still not sure about this. And it's okay to say it in that setting, to say, I'm not okay, or I don't understand. They will most will take the time to explain it and help you understand things. So yeah, definitely feedback, a very, very important element. And I think it's about not being scared, but it's also about taking advantage of opportunities to sit in, so, if anyone's interested, if you want to sit in to any of our sort of governance type meetings to understand what people talk about on a high level, that door's open. You can just send us an email and we'll send you the dates of the meetings that we have, and we're more than happy to join in and just be a fly on the wall. And then we can have a chat later, for the things that you didn't quite understand, or why people were opposed to something, or why people really wanted something. There's events, so if you want to attend any events to help you understand PPI better, then yeah, definitely talk to us. If the cost is reasonable, we can support sort of some travel expenses, to help you get to a certain place. And what we do ask for in return is you obviously provide us with a summary of what you think went on and your view on that particular event. because it might also help other people who have thought about it but haven't had the chance to. So those are the types of things that we're sort of doing at the moment, is just trying to widen, you know, that understanding and that participation, because I think that's what gives you sort of the confidence. If you understand what to expect, then you've got a bit more confidence to say, well, actually, I don't think that device is going to work well with this this group of people with this certain these needs. Yeah, so Joanne, you put understanding is important. You know, your PA is dyslexic, so things like this need looking at, and constructive criticism is so important. Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely about that constructive criticism, and we can help you with that. You know, that's what people like us are here to do. We are the bridge, and we're here to meet your needs. Julie?
Yeah, sort of going to the other end of the spectrum, I talked about priorities right at the beginning before. And of course, right at the other end, when it's all finished, you've got dissemination. And I think we can make a really big contribution to dissemination, because when it comes to the end of the project, all the way through the project, the researchers are publishing in academic journals here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes we get our names on papers if we've been involved in helping to, you know, review them and that sort of thing, which is great. But then when it comes to the end, the general public want to know, well, what were the results?
Yeah.
And that's where we can come in, because we have, you know, some ideas about how they're going to reach the general public. We can help them writing things in lay ways that the general public kind of going to understand and find readable. And then we can also join in with them in things like media presentations, because whenever they want to talk to a researcher about the outcome of research on radio or television, they always like to drag a PPI person along who's been involved and who had the condition, you know, the human interest angle, which can be a bit irritating at times, but it gives you a chance to actually say something about the research and how you took part in it, and encourage people to join in research in the future. So I think we've got something really to offer there for dissemination, and also engagement, where they're going out and talking to the public, you know, having an actual member of the public join in. It always sort of enhances the event, I think.
Yeah, no, dissemination, I think, is our key focus for this year, actually, as the MedTech Cooperative, is we want to disseminate that information better. So we're looking at things like, you know, you've got the usual things, as you mentioned, the publications, but actually, can a member of the public or a PPI member who's worked on that research actually produce an equivalent version, but for members of the public, without all the jargon and all the funny statistics, symbols and things that is just like, you know, for a lot of people, we last saw those things at O-level maths. But it's actually, how do we get rid of all of that and have something that just people can actually read and understand? It's about doing things around, you know, actually, do we need like a video series? Do we need actually a PPI member with a company or researcher actually sitting and talking through about actually how they found the process of working together? You know, because then that would also help to sort of possibly humanize the researchers, to say, no, they're not just focused on these technical things. You know, a lot of them actually have the patient's best interests at heart. It's just possibly not always communicated in a way that looks that way. So dissemination, absolutely huge. And yeah, I mean, we're interested in any suggestions in how we can do that. Yeah, but dissemination, I think, is an absolutely key thing. You don't know what you don't know, and we need to make people aware of the things that we are doing. Yeah, so thanks for that, Julie. And Joanne, in terms of contacting us, there will be a specific email on the email that I'm going to send via, so I think it's the Eventbrite's going to send you the email through the system, but there will be a specific email address, and you can just contact us on that particular thing, address. And it doesn't matter where you sit in the country. We might have leads on all our paperwork. That's just more an admin thing. It does not reflect whatsoever the population we work with. So we work with anyone, anywhere, as long as you are interested in medical technology, you're interested in patient and public involvement and engagement. We are here to answer the questions and direct you to other places as well, where there might be research that's more aligned with your needs. Peter?
Yeah, I was going to say, along with the the thing with new people joining, I think it's really important for training. Zoom and Teams, universities or research tend to favour Teams when a lot of people are struggling with broadband internet connection and their own, you know, whether on phone, tablet.
Yeah.
And I think Zoom tends to be the preferred option of most members of the public because they're reasonably familiar with it. So yeah, but it's amazing how many people haven't had any training at all and have just learnt it off their own bat. Yeah. Because it's not been thought about.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a very good point. I know in the beginning days of when COVID first hit, I think actually they probably used to send out a guidance document on how to use Zoom and how to use Teams. I think, you know, some organizations used to send that out so it would help people sort of navigate their way with that. But that's actually a very good point, because I think now there's almost an assumption that we've been doing this for 2+ years already. You should know your way around one or the other. But yeah, I think what we can do with that regard actually is obviously dig up those instructions again, because they do exist. You know, it was common instructions across all organizations. Yeah, so we can dig those up again and help people navigate their way around these platforms. So Joanne says, I'm happy to ask questions that may seem silly because I don't embarrass. I'd rather ask and be told. Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Yeah, that's what we want. We want people who ask the stupid, silly questions. You know, the only silly question is one that's not asked. And you'll be surprised, there'll probably be lots of other people that actually were wondering the same thing, but don't have the courage to. It tends to happen a lot. So. Yeah, Becky, and yeah, I know your cat's put an appearance. Yeah. Any other comments and questions that people want to add? Yes, Julie?
Yeah, just one last thing, and that is, I think, never underestimate your opinion to see things from a different perspective from the researchers that they won't have thought of because they're focused on their research. And it's things like, I know a project once where they wanted, it was older people, they wanted to get them in to have a blood test in the hospital, and they thought, oh, we'll make it really convenient, 9 o'clock, so they can come and be straight off, not have to hang about. So they booked them all in, they said they'd come, people didn't turn up. And it turned out that the bus pass didn't come into operation until 10 o'clock. And some of these people lived at a bit of a distance away. And it's practical things like that that we can spot that somehow the researchers often don't, because they're focusing on other things. So we see things from a different perspective, and quite a practical perspective. And very often we can set research on the right track by saying, oh, you know, you need to think about this, you need to get it right. And that will save a lot of time, effort, and money by just making suggestions that'll make it work for the participants in a trial. Yeah.
Yeah, and Becky's added, there, how many meetings can people organize over a school run? Exactly. It's like, yeah, it works well for the researchers. Doesn't necessarily work well for everybody else. You know, it's like the researchers have got a car parking space already sorted out wherever they're going. But as a patient, you need to navigate hospital car parks and the charges associated with that. Which is also often overlooked because, you know, as researchers, you don't think about the cost of parking somewhere. You know, and Joanne has added as well, yes, a disabled person needs longer to get ready to leave the house. Yeah, that's definitely true. Very similar to people with children as well. If you're going to have to leave the house with children, it's just double the amount of time. You can't, with the best will in the world, get them out at the time that you want them to get out as well. But it's all these things that, you know, you might think actually are nothing, but they do actually impact on how research is eventually delivered, you know, by the researchers or the companies. Yeah, so definitely that. And I know, Peter, you mentioned something as well about payment and reimbursement. Yeah, payment and reimbursement is still a nightmare, mainly because of just the way I think particularly the universities interpret that advice from Her Majesty's Treasury and the tax people, and the NHR as a whole is looking at a way of making it much, much better. But one of the things to be aware of is actually, you know, if you are invited to sort of provide feedback and contribute to research projects, you are entitled to reimbursement of your time and, you know, acknowledging your expertise and your knowledge around that. You know, this move away from making it, we're moving away from saying, well, it's actually free, because, well, no, it's not free. You are providing something that somebody would never have gotten just by going on the internet. There's no way they can do that. And that sort of goes along the same lines of what Philip was saying, is actually you can make it a career in some respect, you know, but it's about understanding how those fees work and whether you are happy with that particular mechanism. Some are imperfect, some are close to perfect, but we ourselves aren't in control of that. We've got to work with the organizations that have got the permissions to raise those payments. So I'm not saying it to incentivize you, but it's just to let you know that as a new member, your time is precious and there is an acknowledgement for that. And yes, even for patients who are not experts, that is certainly the case. So I know members of our group that have attended our MedTech focus groups, for instance, where a company just comes and presents their technology. You don't need to be an expert for that. What we want you to do is to have a look at that technology, listen to what they're saying, ask questions, make suggestions, and then they'll go away, you know, with the feedback and do what they do. You know, something as simple as that does attract some reimbursement for your time. You know, so at the moment, that's, for us, it's set at £40 an hour. And, you know, for people with caring responsibilities, for instance, they can, depending on, it varies on the organization, but yeah, you can actually say you do need to also pay time for a carer to be with you during a particular time if you do need to have that support. So that, you know, that can be discussed. I won't say it's very easy to arrange in terms of the carer stuff, but if people do need it, it's something we can actually discuss with the universities and the hospitals. So yeah, you don't need to be an expert to get that, but it's just to make you aware that the main issue with the payments is just sometimes they take a very long time to process by the universities and the trusts. And it's usually the first payment for most people that takes a very long time because it includes registering you and everything else. But once that bit's over, for most people, that bit, it rolls over like clockwork. You either get your payment every second week or every month, whatever the schedule is for the organization. So Hamid, and then I'll come to you, Peter. So Hamid. You're on mute, Hamid, if you're talking. No, you might not be there. Okay, Peter, you go first, and Hamid, you come in later.
I'll just agree, the comment that Becky's put in about keeping an eye on all these payments, it made me chuckle because I have a book and I've actually started a list now of the longest payment. I think the longest one I've had is 18 weeks from doing an activity to receiving payment. And I don't want to go on about it too long, but I do find it extraordinary. Since 1990, we've been talking about this and nothing really has changed. And it's so different depending on which university you go to, varying rates and all sorts.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't even understand why this is still a problem. I think we also did 18 weeks, Peter. I know there was someone who took part in something in May last year and they only got paid in October or November. Yeah, and that was a nightmare to just try and untangle what had happened and where that payment had got lost. Yeah, and some people have better experiences with other universities. So that's just something I think you need to be aware of, is just because one university or trust pays you within 24 hours doesn't mean all the others have to do that. They're each working to their own systems and their own practices, unfortunately. Yes, Hamid.
Thank you so much for bringing me in. Sorry, I was trying to unmute before, but I'm glad Peter went first. I was going to say that we need to also think about how we word and explain things, because sometimes payment could be a regular thing, but honorarium is a one-off. But sometimes the honorarium gets confused with payment, as in like paid work, and then people on benefits get all themselves tangled up. So I think we should kind of clarify what honorarium is and what payment is and what is work and what is a one-off. And if we are going to use in some places vouchers as an honorarium, how would that work out in the protocol around it? Another simplest way around it is that we get people to sign a form that they are responsible for their own tax and national insurance. That way, you are not responsible for them, because everyone has different ways of, because I do self-assessment, some people might do something else, some people might prefer to be on pay as you earn. So it's an area that we could have a discussion on at some point, discuss what could work for individuals, but what can make it the most accessible and easy for people to take part in PPI work without having the fear of losing their benefits or having the fear of assuming that they're doing something against the law when they're not. Thank you. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot for that, Hamid, actually, because I think the assumption there is people understand what payment they're going to get and how it all works. But I'm glad you raised that, because honorarium is different to just a one-off, sort of payment. Expenses are different to payment for your time. So expenses tend to be things like, in the good old days, they tend to be travel and hotel accommodation, any food you've used during the course of your journey to get to somewhere. So those tend to be a whole lot quicker and easier to sort out, because it's more or less you just get a form at the end of the event or activity, fill in your details, we send it off, and they pay you within 10 days. You've got, and then you've got the payments for your time. So people who come to our focus groups or any other sort of one-off activities like that, we tend to provide a payment for your time, for contributing to it and providing your expertise. And that tends to be set. And then the honoraria is, it's more or less like you are a temporary member of staff. So you are expected to turn up at certain things and you get paid for that. So for instance, if you end up sitting on a committee, a high level committee, they tend to have meetings 4 times a year, or it might be monthly, then that tends to be a bit more intensive processing for the HR department, so that you tend to become a temporary member of staff. And then that is where the whole tax stuff ends up coming in. And you're absolutely right. At the moment, the university stance is they will do the bare minimum they need to do to answer to the tax authorities. But you as an individual need to work out, well, actually, how is this going to affect any benefits? How is this going to affect any other payments? Then that's the bit where they're saying it's hands off. But definitely worth having a conversation later on that, with people probably understand that topic a whole lot more. So we'll try get someone from a university, a trust, so that they can try and explain to us actually how that works in principle. But very good suggestion.
That sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. And V, I need to leave now. But thank you so much. It's been a good session, and I shall see you in the future. And also, I was going to say, maybe we could also discuss about data costs if people are coming to online meetings. I know NIHR has a good practice that says if the meeting is up to 2 hours, you can claim £5. If it's half a day, £10. I know there's some places that do that. So maybe we could think about that in the future, because people may face data costs as a barrier to attend to meetings. But that's another discussion we can have at another meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hamid, and take care. And we'll catch up soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. So before I come to you, Philip, so Becky's put vouchers. She wants vouchers that people can actually use. You hate one for all vouchers because you have to register and do all the rigmarole around that. So vouchers, that's another issue as well with universities, because I think the process of getting vouchers are slightly easier, but I think it's a very manual process. So I know for us at Leeds, I actually physically then have to go to the university and I've got to witness them signing or stamping something multiple amount of times before I can actually even send them out. And then any that are not used need to come back, and then there's a whole process. So vouchers tend to be easy if you can use them, but they're a nightmare to organize. But that shouldn't stop you from requesting them. Yes, Philip.
I was really going to talk about vouchers, but at the end of the day, expenses, honoraria, whatever you want to call it, we are at the, if you like, the wants of the university or organization. They set the rules as to how we get paid and what we get paid. And if I might quote an example, on a nice committee I sat on. This was run by the Royal College of Physicians. So I was, if you like, not covered by NICE's expenses rules, but by the Royal College of Physicians. Now, there I had to become an employee. I actually got holiday pay and God knows what else, tax deducted, etc., etc. That doesn't really matter. It just means that at the end of the year, you can write to HMRC and say, look, this was payment, if you like, or honoraria, because they won't deduct tax for payments for PPI, if you like, up to certain values. And those values are not published. So it's a question of, you know, if you earn a lot of money, then they might take the tax off. If you don't earn, then they won't. So it can get quite complicated. Yeah. In terms of benefits, that is even more complicated because if I was on a means-tested benefit and I went to my local job centre and said, look, I'm earning now 40 quid or something from this meeting, they might treat that as earnings and take a deduction. Go to a different job centre and I might live in, say, Birmingham or somewhere, and they will ignore it. So they all vary slightly. However, the NIHR, in their wisdom, have set up a call centre, which is run by Citizens Advice Bureau, for those people on trials or doing PPI that are getting paid, can phone up, explain their situations, and Citizens Advice Bureau, funded by the NIHR, will give you advice on what to do in terms of claiming. But it is a minefield. We really need an MP in the House of Commons to champion this idea that it should be tax-free, national insurance-free, etc. Yeah. But anyway, that's my bit. And I'm terribly sorry, V, but I now have to leave and wend my way to Oxford for another meeting. So
good luck with that.
Well, no, they're very good, because what they do twice a year is all the trials that they're involved in, they have a meeting. So they discuss with the PPI people how those trials are doing, what they're up to, and the researchers come and talk to everybody. And I think that's very good gold-plated practice. So anyway.
We'll definitely take learnings from that, but thank you for your contributions.
Yeah, it really is useful. So there are 3 trials we're going to talk about this afternoon, of which PPI have been involved. And the researchers are coming to talk to the audience, which there'll be about 40 or 50 of us, about how that trial's going and what input PPI had, etc., etc. So it's feedback, and we're being kept informed, if you like, which is really good. Anyway, I'll go off to Oxford then.
All right.
Lovely to meet you all. Good luck, and enjoy yourself doing PPI.
All right. Thank you, Philip. So I think definitely, so Peter's put, he thinks MPs have got their own problems with taxes. Yeah, probably. But I think on the back of what Philip was saying and some of the comments around what people can earn, we can definitely put on something. What I'll do is I will find people who know sufficiently enough about how all of this works and how people can navigate around this. And then we can put on another session at some point, maybe in the next 2-3 months. And then if you've got any sort of questions and any sort of real life examples that you want to ask, then we can do that with someone who can give you a bit more information than I can. But yeah, £20 seems to be just ridiculous to do anything, because a whole lot of PPI is going to offer you a whole lot more, so typically if you're going to work on, research protocols, or if you're going to be involved in something for the duration of a day, you're looking at getting at least £120 for that. So you don't want to have to make a choice between that. So definitely I will look at putting something on. And wherever you found this advert, or if you sign up to our mailing list, then once we organize that and we get a few speakers, then you will get details of that, and then you'll be able to register for that event. So yeah, we've had a few good event suggestions, so we can definitely put those on, and then have, and then you can come prepared with questions and hopefully get some sort of definitive answers, is the wish. So yes, I think you've stayed on for half an hour longer. Thank you very much for that. And I can see you're ready to go.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you say, okay, I don't want to be paid money-wise, I want a voucher. It's
Yes,
easy.
you can request
Because I'm on
vouchers.
pension. I can't be bothered with all that tax thing. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, no, you can definitely request vouchers.
Mhm.
So, you know, vouchers are perfectly acceptable. They just make a bit more sense. So I know Ava's put some suggestions for payments by companies, and we'll definitely look at that, Ava. So thank you. But the problem with vouchers is it depends. Well, for some universities, it's volume based. So if it's just vouchers for one person, they won't do it. You've got to have a minimum core of maybe 10 or 20 or something to make vouchers worth their while. So it will differ.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
it will differ according to the organization, but yes, you can definitely ask for vouchers. And I think possibly what we could do actually is say, yes, you don't have to have the money going into your bank account if though, because the tax thing seems a bit complicated.
Just like to point out, vouchers are taxable. Vouchers
Yes.
count as income, so it doesn't get you out of paying tax, I'm afraid.
But they haven't bothered me. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can always put it out there. And Becky said she likes Amazon. Everyone likes Amazon vouchers.
Yeah,
But
I
I
like
know some
Amazon.
places, yeah, they don't. Yeah, so yeah, so definitely you can. We'll make that more explicit on the offerings that we provide. But you can ask for vouchers. It's perfectly legal and acceptable.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I will let you guys go, but thank you very much. Thank you for all the questions. You should get an email by the end of the week, which will have a link to the video if you want to rewatch some of the points. And I'll also sort of put some notes. So any questions people have asked for some sort of resources, I will try and include them in that particular email. And that email will also have the link to sign on to our mailing list. So you can choose whether you just want to find out about events or it's just PPI or any other options that are presented on there. If you sign up to that, then you won't miss anything that comes our way. So if there's any opportunities that look like you want to do, you will definitely be able to sign on through access to that particular mailing list. Okay, so yeah, I'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of your week and we will catch up later. Bye.